morning, Archana. Good morning. So we can start reading. It's 8 o'clock. So, but here a second condition comes in. Now, what is the second condition? I'll just tell you, and then we'll start. There are two sources of information Srimdas told us earlier. The first source of information is your own subliminal, which is it holds all knowledge within itself in essence. And when it contacts another object to be known, okay, then there is a meeting of my consciousness with the other consciousness, and there is a spark of knowledge that comes. There is a subliminal intuitive knowledge which is there inside. The other knowledge is what you are gathering from the physical world. Suppose you go to school, okay, then you are getting knowledge from there. Or when you are reading a book, you get knowledge from there. Or you are experiencing in the physical world. So two sources of knowledge. The first source has told us that error does not matter. Error is not deformative. Okay, it does not lead to falsehood. It only leads to a partial truth. Now he's discussing the second condition of the evolution. So we'll read that one. And Sumke said that we have already read it. We have to only go through each line. Okay, we'll do that. Maybe I can just summarize the previous para so that we have the continuity. 1 second. Yeah. So in the previous para, Srimad said, error by itself does not necessarily lead to falsehood. It can, but not necessarily. Okay. But because when there is the unknown, all possibilities have to be tried out and then accepted or rejected or even kept pending. Okay, all these things are there. And even if the new incoming knowledge is imperfect, it could very well lead us to new truths. Okay, not intended. You can stumble upon new discoveries. Yesterday we were discussing, and when someone was trying to find something, discovered penicillin by chance. So that was an example that we gave about this one. And while all this is going on, the range and clarity of our already known field is increasing. With just 1 second, again my computer. Yeah. Yeah. Even if the new incoming knowledge is imperfect, it could very well lead us to new truths not intended. And while all this is going on the range of the clarity of our already known field, it is increasing. With the growth of knowledge and consciousness, even with errors, the resistance of the density of the surface consciousness diminishes. The density and obstruction diminishes. And the, and the outer instruments, body, mind, life, are prepared through this process for a better reception of the intuition, constantly trying to guide, impel, and urge towards the truth. This is what he said in the previous para. Now, we read what he said now. Each sentence I will read. But here, the second condition or factor of the evolution intervenes. For this seeking for knowledge is not an impersonal mental process hampered only by the general limitations of mind intelligence. The ego is there. That's a big problem. The ego is there, the physical ego, the life ego, bent not on self-knowledge and the discovery of the truth of things and the truth of life, but on vital self-affirmation. That is the problem. So when the Ego is always trying to satisfy itself. A mental ego, so Surendra is about a life ego, and then a mental ego also is there. A mental ego is there, also bent. Bent means inclined to, tending towards, okay, bent in that sense, leaning towards in that sense. There is also bent on its own personal self-affirmation and largely directed and used by the vital urge for its life desire and life purpose. Okay, so the ego is always trying to satisfy its life desires, and what I want to do in life, life purpose, it is trying to achieve that. As for as mind develops, there develops also a mental individuality with a personal drive of mind tendency, a mental temperament, a mind formation of its own. So everybody is growing and there is a revolution for everybody. So in the beginning, even if you are vital, the amount of knowledge that you are getting from the physical world increases your capacity of knowledge. So when that increase of capacity of knowledge is there, it can shift from life status to mental status. Okay, so that's what he's saying. The drive of mind tendency increases. A mental temperament, a mind formation of its own. This surface mental individuality is also egocentric. In fact, Sharma says that the ego is mainly centered in the mind. Okay, that's uh, the the largest part of the ego is in the mind. It is there in the life also to a certain extent. It is there even in the body. Okay, the body feels itself to be separate from everybody else. So there also there is a ego. This surface mental individuality is egocentric. It looks at the world and things and happenings from its own standpoint and sees them not as they are. That's interesting. It sees not objectively as they are, but as they affect itself. How is it affecting me? That is more important. Okay, so this is the surface mental individuality explaining how it is egocentric. It looks at the world and things and happenings from its own standpoint and sees them not as they are, but as they affect itself. So, when will you see them as they are? Only when you are absolutely objective and there is no vital interference in the mental processes, nor is there any body influences in the mind. Then you can see objectively, but not before that. There can be clarity of mind, but it's never fully objective. So, in observing things, the mental ego, in observing things, it gives them the turn suitable to its own tendency and temperament. Okay. Yes, once again. Yeah. It gives them the turn suitable to its own tendency and temperament. Selects or rejects, arranges truth according to its own mental preference and convenience. Observation, judgment, reason are all determined or affected by this mind personality and assimilated to the needs of the individuality and the ego. We know this. Suppose I have a desire or I have preferences, they affect my judgment. It's very clear. We used to see that very clearly when a basketball match is being played and there's a judge, okay, there's a judge who has got friends in one team, he will always be, he will always be preferring and siding with the team who has got in whose team there are friends, okay, his own friends. So observation, judgment, reason are all determined or affected by this mind personality and assimilated to the needs of the individuality and the ego. Okay. Even when the mind aims most at a pure impersonality, of truth and reason, a sheer impersonality is impossible to it. That's exactly what we're discussing. It becomes possible when your consciousness goes out of the body-mind life, becomes separated from it, and enters the Brahman consciousness even in the higher mind. Not before that. Before that, your mind is always colored by the vital and the body. Even the most trained, severe, and vigilant intellect fails to observe the twists and turns it gives to truth in the reception of fact and idea and the construction of its mental knowledge. So, whether it be a discussion of facts or anything, or even ideas, or even data coming from the physical world, your judgment is always tainted. It is always colored by your own desires and your own preferences. That's what he's saying. Here, we have an almost inexhaustible source of distortion of truth because the ego is there. Okay? A cause of falsification, an unconscious or half-conscious will to error. Now, note that we are not conscious that it's an error, but we want to, even if we know, then we will turn it towards what we want. Even if we know, normally we don't know it's an error, but even if it's an error, it will go to that. Okay, so very interesting what he's saying. Unconscious or half-conscious will to error. It leans towards that because of their preferences. An acceptance of ideas or facts, not by clear perception of the true and the false, but by preference. There you are. Personal suitability, temperamental choice, prejudgment. All these things come from the vital. And they color the mind also. And the mind also is never fully objective unless it rises to the second level, the spiritual planes. Here is a fruitful seed plot for the growth of falsehood, or a gate or many gates through which it can enter by stealth or by usurping, but acceptable violence. Acceptable to you may not be acceptable to others. Okay, so very interesting what he's saying. So here is a fruitful seed plot. Very interesting image Srindra is using. You have a plot, and that plot is your mind, and that plot is growing only plants which are falsehood. There is no good plants of truth are not growing there. Okay, you have a fruitful seed plot for the growth of falsehood, or a gate, or many gates through which it can enter by stealth. You are not even conscious of how you are being. It is entering by stealth. Stealth means without your consciousness, without your being conscious of it, you are making an error. Okay, or by usurping, but acceptable violence. So, in other words, the error can come into you without your being conscious of it. And even if you are conscious of the error, it is acceptable to you. I know that what I'm doing is not right, and yet I prefer that to the other possibility. That's what's very interesting. The language is clear. So, the error can come in because of your ego. You are always judging everything by your own ego. And you want it to go to a certain direction. This is exactly what happens always in our judgment of things. You know? Suppose everybody expects that the world should go according to how I want it to go. And when the world does not do that because it's not going according to your plot, you get angry and you get annoyed and you want it to. So always there is a color of the ego which comes in. And sometimes even if you know that it is wrong, you will accept it. Srindra is using the word. Very interesting, he's using the word acceptable violence. Okay. I know that what I'm doing is wrong, yet I prefer that to the other one. Okay. Truth too can enter in and take up its dwelling, not by its own right, but at the mind's pleasure. So truth also can enter. After all, the whole world is nothing but mixture of falsehood and truth. So a little bit of truth can also come in. But that depends on whether the mind wants to accept it or not. It doesn't come in by itself. There is the word not by its own right. But it needs the permission of the mind to enter into the mind seed plot. Okay? Interesting image he's using. So clear? The intuition and the outer knowledge of the physical world. These are the two sources of knowledge. And error, how is error coming in? In the intuition, when it is coming, even if it is partial and not fully true, error may come in, but it is not distorting. But in the other one, because there is the ego, then the problem arises, and the ego is always something which falsifies and distorts things. That's what Swami is saying. So now we go to the next paragraph. In the terms of the Sankhya Kalava, somebody has to read. So,
Okay, Rangada, I'm reading.
please, Archana, read it in the terms.
In the terms of the Sankhya psychology, we can distinguish three types of mental individuality. That which is governed by the principle of obscurity and inertia, firstborn of the inconscience, tamasic. That which is governed by a force of passion and activity, kinetic, rajasic. That which is cast in the mold of the sattvic principle of light, harmony, balance. The tamasic intelligence has its seat in the physical mind. It is inert to ideas except to those which it receives inertly, blindly, passively from a recognized source or authority. Obscure in their reception, unwilling to enlarge itself, recalcitrant to new stimulus, conservative and immobile. It clings to its received structure of knowledge, and its one power is repetitive practicality, but it is a power limited by the accustomed, the obvious, the established and familiar, and already secure. It thrusts away all that is new and likely to disturb it. The Rajasic intelligence has its main seat in the vital mind and is of two kinds. One kind is defensive, with violence and passion, assertive of its mental individuality and all that is in agreement with it, preferred by its volition, adapted to its outlook, but aggressive against all that is contrary to its mental ego structure or unacceptable to its personal intellectuality. The other kind is enthusiastic for new things, passionate, insistent, impetuous, often mobile beyond measure, inconstant and ever restless, governed in its idea not by truth and light, but by the zest of intellectual battle and movement and adventure. The sattvic intelligence is eager for knowledge, as open as it can be to it, careful to consider and verify and balance, to adjust and adapt to its view whatever confirms itself as truth, receiving all that it can assimilate, skillful to build truth in a harmonious intellectual structure, but because its light is limited, as all mental light must be, it is unable to enlarge itself so as to receive equally all truth and all knowledge. It has a mental ego, even an enlightened one, and is determined by it in its observation, judgment, reasoning, mental choice, and preference. In most men, there is a predominance of one of these qualities, but also a mixture. The same mind can be open and plastic and harmonic in one direction, kinetic and vital, has hasty and prejudiced, and ill balanced in another, in yet another obscure and unreceptive. This limitation by personality, this defense of personality and refusal to receive what is unassimilable is necessary for the individual being because, in its evolution, at the stage reached, it has a certain self expression, a certain type of experience and use of experience which must, for the mind and life at least, govern nature. That for the moment is its law of being, its dharma. This limitation of mind consciousness by personality and of truth by mental temperament, and preference must be the rule of our nature, so long as the individual has not reached universality, is not yet preparing for mind transcendence. But it is evident that this condition is inevitably a source of error and can at any moment be the cause of a falsification of knowledge, an unconscious or half willful self deception, a refusal to admit true knowledge, a readiness to assert acceptable wrong knowledge as true knowledge.
Big para and very detailed analysis of the sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic nature of the human being. Very interesting discussion, and it will definitely take us a good deal of time to do that. Okay, so let's see what he says.
Can I ask a question?
Of course, of course.
You said that the consciousness
Yeah,
has to leave the body-mind life in order to enter the higher ends. So
yes,
how does the consciousness leave the body-mind life and go higher up?
that is the
What
whole
is the
process of yoga.
method?
That is whole process of yoga. There are so many different types of yogas. One is to make the mind silent. Okay. The other is through prayer and love. Okay. The other is the karma yoga through the jnana yoga, bhakti yoga, karma yoga. That can happen. Or if your past life you have already progressed a good deal, it can be spontaneous also without any effort. It can happen. I have known even in the ashram some people who apparently not doing yoga, okay, but they get glimpses of the truth of the silent mind. Their mind becomes silent at sometimes. One boy had it for a very short time, okay, for about 5 minutes it was there, complete silence of the mind. So, how does it come? It comes by development of the being, by evolution. And that can be in this life or it can be from past lives also. I interrupted you, Yasmin, before you finished your question. So your question was, how does one go out of the body-mind life and go to the spiritual level of consciousness? Was that the question?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So that's right. It comes by development. It comes by development, intended or unintended, depending on how developed you are in your past life. I gave you an example of one or two cases where it came spontaneously, but for a very short time. Okay. Then you find it so wonderful that you want to develop it. So it can be by intention if you do yoga, or it can be unintentionally, it can come spontaneously if your development has been sufficiently good in the past life. That's right. Okay, so now we start looking at the, yeah. I'm reading each sentence, okay? In the terms of the Sankhya philosophy, psychology, we can distinguish three types of mental individuality. He's talking only of the mind, he's not talking of the vital and the body, because the mind enters the body, there's a combination of the two, and that's a physical mind. He also calls it sometimes the material mind. In our Indian psychology, it's called manas, the one that interprets the senses. Okay, the senses are the data from the physical world is collected through the senses, and the data is sent through nerves to the brain, and it's the brain that is interpreting. Okay, that is something that we have always been insisting on. A newborn baby its senses are collecting data, but the mind is not interpreting. So that's why it doesn't understand anything. So it has to be slowly programmed, the mind. That's a manas. Okay, so that's the first. Mental intelligence. The mind also mixes with the vital, and you have a vital mind. Okay, and Shrivya is so particular. There's a difference between vital mind and mental vital. Even grades are there. And the physical vital and the vital physical. There also they're slightly different. There's a gradation. Okay, so he is discussing first about the tamas. That which is governed by the principle of obscurity and inertia. Okay, inertia and obscurity. Firstborn of the inconscience, tamasic. Because you are starting from the inconscient, necessarily it has to be tamas, which comes up first. Okay. Activity is there. There is no activity in the inconscient, but when activity comes up, it is heavily influenced by the inconscient. That's where tamas comes in. Okay, tamas, that which is governed by the force of passion and activity, kinetic, rajasic, full of energy and movement. That's a rajasic. That which is cast in the mold of the sattvic principle of light, harmony, balance. That's a sattvic. Now, Chandra is going into details. The tamasic intelligence has its seat in the physical mind. He uses the word physical mind, which is the manas. That part of the mind which is only interpreting the senses. It is inert to ideas. New ideas, it is incapable of having new ideas. Okay? Or even ideas, even it is incapable of accepting, understanding. Except to those which it receives inertly, blindly, passively, from a recognized source of authority. What other people tell it, then it accepts. Now, this is very interesting because when we read a newspaper, we accept quite happily the news that is coming. And today, maybe 100 years ago, it was not too bad. But today, it is absolutely fake news is there. Okay? It started, in India at least, it started with people who want to win the election and they tell the newspapers, we'll give you an article about ourselves, you please print it. And they give money for it. So fake news started like that. And now the fake news has reached an unbelievable level because of the artificial intelligence. You will see very often a small child in the video spouting philosophy. So it is visually it is very convincing, but absolutely fake. Okay. So our idea of the physical mind is accepting blindly, it is accepting all these things. That is the reason why I'll give you an interesting incident. You may not know about it. But in the ashram, the notice boards are there. And by the side of the notice boards, there's a room. Okay. And that room used to be called the fruit room. Later on, it became the fruit room. But before the fruit room, and I think now they despise the Hindi magazine from there. Okay. Agnishika and Puroda, I think they have merged and become one. And it is issued from there. But earlier, the newspapers used to come. Indian Express, okay, Hindu, and maybe the Hindustan Times, other newspapers used to come. And people used to go and read the newspaper there. You know what was the name of that room? Mother gave the name of the room of falsehood. So that's exactly what we are saying here. Okay, that the tamasic mind accepts all ideas without examination, blindly and in a very passive manner. It receives all these ideas. The tamasic intelligence has its seat in the physical mind. It is inert to ideas, can't accept new ideas very easily, except those which it receives inertly, blindly, passively from a recognized source or authority. Oh, he is saying that, so it must be true, because he is very dependable. That's how we argue. Obscure in its reception, unwilling to enlarge itself, recalcitrant to new stimulus. Recalcitrant, unwilling, okay? Hesitant to get new ideas. Conservative and immobile. Now, these very interesting, these words. If you remember in the synthesis, he says the physical life, the characteristics are repeatability, okay, and status quo. It doesn't want to change. Its idea is status quo, no change. And that's the physical vital, okay? Or physical mental. That's it. It doesn't want to change very easily. So the tamasic intelligence has a seat in the physical mind. It is inert to ideas, except to those which it receives inertly, blindly, passively from a recognized source of or authority, obscure in its reception, not understanding correctly, unwilling to enlarge itself, recalcitrant to new impulse, conservative and immobile. Conservative and immobile. He has told us that in the synthesis. Okay. The characteristic energy of the physical life is conservation, reproduction, and status quo. Conservation, no change. It clings to its received structure of knowledge, and its one power is repetitive practicality. There you are. Okay. There he has used the word reproduction. Here he is using the word repetitive practicality. That's all. It wants to just remain in its comfort zone, doesn't want to change the physical mind. But it is a power limited by the accustomed, the obvious, the established and familiar and already secure. So look at all the words carefully. Repetitive practicality. Okay. It goes on repeating the same thing over and over again. And also the physical mind, there's another part of it which is called the mechanical mind. Okay. And the mechanical mind is perfect, this repetitive practicality. There is a mechanical mind. It is that which goes on repeating things even unconsciously. When you have heard a tune, for instance, okay, you will see that it is going on spinning in your mind. You are unable to get rid of it. That's a mechanical mind. You know, those who are children are autistic. This part of the mind is very living, okay, very prominent. And that's why they go on arranging things in a very interesting manner. Okay, they go on repeating certain things. This is the repetitive practicality. You can use another word is the mechanical mind. Mechanical mind is part of the physical mind. But it is a power limited by the accustomed, the obvious, the established and familiar and already secure. It thrusts away all that is new and likely to disturb it. It doesn't want its comfort zone, it doesn't want to change. Okay. The Rajasic intelligence, and by the way, is likely to disturb it. That's the reason why most institutions, if you put new rules, there is always going to be an obstruction and there will be difference of opinion. There will always be somebody who will oppose those rules. Because they don't want to change easily. Now it comes to the Rajasic intelligence, the vital mind. The Rajasic intelligence has its main seat in the vital mind and is of two kinds. There also see how Srivastava's analysis, two kinds, even in the Rajasic mind. One kind is defensive, with violence and passion, assertive of its mental individuality and all that is in agreement with it, preferred by its volition. Okay. Just 1 second. Yeah, preferred by its volition. Volition, will. Okay. So, Rajasic intelligence. Defensive with violence and passion. Doesn't want to accept new ideas. Violently reject. Assertive of its mental individuality and all that is in agreement with it. Preferred by its volition. Adapted to its outlook, but aggressive against all that is contrary to its mental ego structure or unacceptable to its personal intellectuality. So, wants to stay put. The other kind is enthusiastic for new things, passionate, insistent, impetuous, often mobile beyond measure, inconstant, and ever restless, governed in its idea by the truth and light. Okay. by the truth and light, but by the zest of intellectual battle and movement and adventure. Now, this is a very interesting thing what he's saying. Both are opposite tendencies. One tendency is not to accept, okay, is the physical vital part of the mind, that it doesn't want to accept new ideas. But the other one is very enthusiastic, because the vital, remember that the vital is full of energy and it wants new things all the time. So it is enthusiastic for new things, passionate, insistent, impetuous, often mobile beyond measure. Okay, you're constantly seeking new ideas and new things, full of enthusiasm, inconstant and ever restless. There is no steadiness in it. Governed in its idea, not by truth and light, but by the zest of intellectual battle and movement and adventure. A quiet judgment is not there. Okay, it's over enthusiastic for anything. Now we come to the sattvic intelligence. So, what an analysis! And if you look into your own self, you will see that all these things are there. There's always a resistance to new ideas, and there's always so-called enthusiasm also for new truths. You want to examine them. Both the things are there in everybody. Now it comes to the third type of intelligence. Sattvic intelligence is eager for new knowledge. Eager for new knowledge, as open as it can be to it. Careful to consider and verify and balance, to adjust and adapt to its view, whatever confirms itself as truth. Receiving all that it can assimilate, skillful to build truth in a harmonious intellectual structure. So, it's the best part of one's being. The sattvic mind. So, that's the best you have. Man can have. That's the best that man can have at level 1. Okay, at level 2 it is spiritual, but level 1, the sattvic mind is the best. Unable to enlarge. Where is it gone? Yeah. Skillful to build truth in a harmonious intellectual structure. But because its light is limited, as all mental light must be, it is unable to enlarge itself so as to receive equally all truth and all knowledge. In other words, even the sattvic intelligence does not have absolute equality, does not have absolute samatha. It has preferences. Unable to enlarge itself so as to receive equally all truth and all knowledge. It has a mental ego, even an enlightened one. Okay, even if it is full of light, it's an ego, all right. Okay, and it's determined by in its observation, judgment, reasoning, mental choice, and preference. The ego is there. In most men, there is a predominance of one of these qualities, but also a mixture. He has told us earlier also that sattva, rajas, tamas are always found together. It is never that only one person has got, or one thing has got only one aspect. It's not there. All the three are constantly mixed. Okay, so that's also another thing that you must remember. Only when they become absolutely equal to each other, then you can rise to the second level of the spiritual planes of consciousness. At that time, there's absolute equality between the sattva, rajas, tamas. And you can go beyond the gunas. You become trigunatita. In most men, there's a predominance of one of these qualities, but also a mixture. The same mind can be open and plastic and harmonic in one direction, kinetic and vital, hasty and prejudiced, and ill-balanced in another. In yet another obscure and unreceptive. Now, this you will see very often. Okay, you will see that somebody is very, very generous. Okay, but that same person can be very cruel. If you look carefully, you will see in life there are many examples. They have seen that many times. So you will feel, oh, what a nice man, he's so generous. But if that same person can also be cruel, and he can be also the opposite. This is the nature of the vital. Huh? The vital is always swinging between extremes. It is subject to dualities, the vital. The same mind can be open and plastic in that way. So The same mind can be open and plastic to harmonic, to plastic, can be open and plastic and harmonic in one direction, kinetic and vital, hasty and prejudiced, ill-balanced in another, in yet another, obscure and unreceptive. All these combinations are possible. This limitation by personality, this defense of personality and refusal to receive what is unassailable, okay, there's just a little more, we'll finish it. Then, unassailable, it is necessary for the individual being. Now that's very interesting. So they're saying that all these defects are necessary. Okay, like exactly we have discussed earlier, those things which were helpful to us become obstructions and not helpful at all. But they are necessary at some stage. Just as he told us the other day that hatred, rejection with hatred is necessary at a certain stage. Then later on, rejection without hatred. So this is the interesting part. So here also, the limitation by man of mind consciousness by personality and truth of mental temperament and preference must be the rule of our nature, so long as the individual has not reached universality. Universality means the cosmic consciousness. In the cosmic consciousness, you are in the second level where there is no ego. Okay, is not yet preparing for mind transcendence. When you have mind transcendence, then these things are not necessary at all. But when you have not, then it's very necessary to have these limitations. But it is evident that this condition is inevitably a source of error and can at any moment be the cause of a falsification of knowledge, unconscious or half-willful self-deception. The capacity of the vital to fool oneself is tremendous. Sandhu says he is a charlatan and a impostor, the mind, the vital mind, the impostor. It's always fooling you. A refusal to admit true knowledge, a readiness to accept and to assert acceptable wrong knowledge as true knowledge. Even that is there. So there is a problem of the vital mind. Okay, it's 8:42. We stop here today. And very interesting discussion of how error can come in. Okay. So he's still talking of error. He's still talking of error only. He's not talking of the evil and falsehood. Error will lead then to that. We'll see that later on. Okay. Au revoir, everybody.
Thank you, Angada.
It's okay. Page 644. Please repeat.
Yes, I'll make a note.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rangada.
Yes. Very analytical, psychological discussion.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Thank you, Rangada. Thank you.
Au revoir, everybody.
Thank you, Angada. See you tomorrow.
Have a nice day.